Today we're going to interview a marvelous photographer, and it is my pleasure to introduce Tim Vanschooten. He is a horseman, he loves the backcountry, and he loves his camera. Tim, tell us about some of your favorite pictures.
Some of my favorite pictures I've taken when I'm packing with my wife on the Pacific Crest Trail. Also when we have a catered ride here in Humboldt County, sponsored by the Backcountry Horsemen. I love taking pictures of some of the riders and the beautiful background of the beautiful country.
We're going to feature some of his pictures. This guy's a great photographer, and I do mean great. Tim, you have stories that go with your pictures. Pick a story to go with a picture.
I would say one of my favorite stories is of a picture that I took. I don't consider it one of my best pictures necessarily, but it's one of my favorites because of the story that goes with it. One day when I was just looking for things to take pictures of, the weather was such that I knew between the rain and the sun that there might be some rainbows. So I like to call that I was chasing rainbows. And I live in Redding, California, and one of the places where I was at was where my mother-in-law lives, and there's a lake called Mary Lake there. It's not a huge lake, but people walk around it, and the conditions were right. So I had gone by Mary Lake, and there's a lot of wildlife there, egrets and ducks and different things, turtles that I've taken pictures of. And so I was on the one side of the lake, and there were some beautiful rainbows. So I positioned myself and tried to position myself with a duck in the background, and it just so happened I took a picture of a rainbow. I think it's a goose that's in it, but in the background are the houses on the other side of the lake. And the rainbow happened to come down right next to this house. And later on, when I edited some of the pictures and printed them up, I had shown them to some people, and one of my clerks at work said, "My husband knows the lady that lives in that house. She would love that picture. Would you make me one of those pictures?" So I made her the picture, and just made a small picture for her, and she was going to give it to this lady. And about I don't know, a month or 6 weeks went by, and I asked my secretary, I said, did you give her the picture? And she goes, "You know what? I've forgotten all about that. I've got to call her up." And a couple days later, she said, "You know what happened?" She said, the lady's husband was in the hospital, and he's actually dying. And we went to see him, and we brought them the picture, and he died that day. But she said, "You know what? That was the most special picture for that lady, because they shared it together, and the rainbow was over their house, and they gave it to her on the day that her husband died." And then she contacted me later, and she said, "I've got to have one of those big pictures." So I made her a big picture and framed it, took it over to her house, and she says, "I had to tell you, you know that picture that we got from your secretary?" She said, "I couldn't go in his den. I couldn't go in his den, but I put it on the desk, and I can go in there and deal with this stuff because I can see that picture that we shared together on the day that he died." And so she bought the big picture, and then later on she contacted me at the end of the year, and she said, "I want to put that picture on my Christmas cards. Would you make me cards for Christmas?" And so that was probably one of the most meaningful times, just to have a picture that meant someone to something and really has a story behind it.
That's a very touching story. Very touching. You don't know how you affect lives by something like that.
You never know. You really never know. In fact, we're here at this ride, and a few years ago I had taken some pictures on the ride, and then there's one of the guys that he's working here this year. It was about 2 or 3 years ago, and I found out that his daughter had passed away in a car accident. And so I went back because he said, "You know, can you make me a picture, one of those pictures, you know, of my daughter?" So I actually went back through some of the archives that I had, because I don't always use all the pictures. I can't fit them all on a disc for people, and went through and found several pictures of his daughter that I had that he hadn't even seen, and made him a disc and sent it to him. So that was kind of a neat thing too.
So you're not only fun, you give those memories to everyone to keep for keepsakes.
Well, that's what photographies are. It really is about making memories, and it really is special. I have artists in my family, but I can't draw worth beans, so I just take pictures.
So you take beautiful pictures, very beautiful pictures.
Thank you.
Some of the trail rides you've been on have been absolutely unbelievable places for photography. Do you have a favorite picture that came out of a trail ride?
I probably have to think about that. I don't know, but I'll look for one and find one for you.
Tell me the man-eating lake story.
All right. One of the things that my wife and I like to do, I should say that my wife eventually convinced me to do. I was never a horseman until I met my wife, and I don't consider myself a horseman, except in the last 2 years I stopped and I thought, you know, I've been riding horses for 35 years. I guess I know a little bit about horses.
You might be a horseman.
Yeah, I might be a horseman. So one of the things that my wife, her goal was to ride the Pacific Crest Trail, and her goal was to ride it all the way to Mexico, but we can only do it, we only have so much time off, so we do it in increments. And we started up at Mount Ashland, and we worked our way down into California and through the Marble Mountains and through the Russian wilderness and into Berney and Berney Falls and a little bit beyond that. So one of my favorite stories about that, and I do have a picture of this lake, but I don't have a lot of pictures of this lake because of the circumstances. So we were doing a section of this trail. We were out on the trail packing for about a week, and we were going from the Marble Mountains through the Russian wilderness to our destination at that point was Etna Summit. And as we were going along, we were looking at the map, and we noticed that there were these beautiful names of these lakes. There was Jewel Lake, I think there was Emerald Lake, and there was Little Elk Lake and Summit Lake. And then somewhere along that map there was this lake called, I think it was Man-Eaten Lake. And we thought, now that's a crazy title, that's a crazy name. But it was 3 or 4 days away, and we enjoyed the wilderness and the wildflowers. And so finally we came to this section called Man-Eaten Lake. And I did take a picture of it right as we were coming up on it, but I thought I'll take a whole lot more nice pictures along the trail because it's this beautiful alpine lake, snow behind it, water running into it, this beautiful blue-green color, waterfall coming out of it. Beautiful lake. Unfortunately, when we got near the lake, I was too scared to take any pictures. And it so happened that all along that lake, the trail is about 6 inches wide, and it's all shale above the lake and below the lake. And then it's about a 600-foot drop down to the lake.
Ooh.
Yeah. So even though I have this picture, I didn't stop and take a lot of pictures. It was pretty treacherous. And actually we got to that section, and my wife and I looked at ourselves and we said, you know, it's probably about 3/4 of a mile across this stretch on this little trail, and we just need to get across this thing as fast as we can. And by experience, one of the things I've learned is I can trust my horse probably better than I can trust myself, because my horse has 4 feet and I've only got 2. And if you can trust the horse enough to sit 6 feet off the ground and not have your own feet on the ground, you probably do better than if you're using your own 2 feet. Because if I slip with 1 foot, I've only got 1 foot, but the horse has 3, and I've watched the pack horse in front of me miss a whole foot on the trail and never miss a beat. So I learned to trust the horse. So we're going across this section of the trail. And we get about 3/4 across, and lo and behold, there's no trail in front of us. We couldn't figure out where the trail was. And we happened to look down to the side, and there, down below us, about 3 feet dropping down, was another 6-inch ledge, and it was a switchback, meaning we're going to go all the way back where we came from, and then we're going to have to switch back all the way again. And my wife made the corner on her horse, gingerly stepped down onto that little trail, made the corner, and as she was coming along, her pack horse was behind her about, on a lead rope, about 7 or 8 feet behind her, and rather than going to the corner, he wanted to turn and jump down probably 5 or 6 feet down onto that little trail. Now, I couldn't do anything. I'm on my horse. All I could do was yell at her and say, "Stop, honey, stop!" And she stopped, and we figured out the situation. She had to back her horse up backwards all along that little trail, back to the little switchback corner, pull the lead rope in, and pull her pack horse around that. Now, their pack horse is really smart. He never had a problem with that again, but he'd never seen a little ledge like that or a little switchback like that. And he was fine after that on the other switchbacks, but that was a pretty hairy moment. When we finally made it across that, we were just relieved. My wife has done all kinds of trails and all kinds of horsemanship, and she said that's probably one of the scariest moments that she'd ever had. So when we got to the end of that trail, that's where I turned around and snapped a picture, I think, of that lake. And we came to a big log that was about this big around that was blocking that whole trail. And I thought, uh-oh, I've got to get the saw out. Fortunately, it was a little wider there, at least we could stand with the horses. And I thought, I'm going to be cutting for an hour or 2 hours just trying to cut a section out of this log because we couldn't go around it because it was still all shale. Well, before I even got to that, my wife just up and takes up the side of the mountain, right up the shale, and she goes up about 30 or 35 feet, never said a word to me, and of course, her horse went, the pack horse went, my horse wasn't going to be left behind, so he just took up off the side of the mountain. And when we got up, there was actually a switchback. She had looked up and seen the switchback up there, and when we got up there, I said, "What did you do that for?" And she said, "Well, I knew we were going to stand there for 2 hours and cut that log, and I knew if I consulted with you, you didn't want to go up that trail, but I knew my horse could make it. So I didn't consult you. I knew you wouldn't have a choice. You only have to follow me." But that's the story of the trail along Man-Eaten Lake. When we finally got out of the shale, the trail went up and it went over a bowl and onto the other side. And we went from the western side of the mountain to the northern side of the mountain. And when we got to the top of the ridge, as we went to the eastern side and we came across the top of the mountain, it was all snow. But at that point, there wasn't any trail. There were some footprints from some of the hikers that had been through there. And we didn't know really where the trail was, but we figured if we could get down through the snow, we'd be able to find the trail. But it was a little treacherous, and we weren't about to go back over back over that shale and where we had come from. It was like the point of no return. So we picked our way down through the bowl, and as it got a little less steep, we were picking our way over some logs and some trees, and wouldn't you know it, one of the trees that we thought had been fallen and laying on the ground was actually a tree that was bent over by the storm and had frozen. And as my wife's horse stepped across it, the tree popped up underneath her horse, and my wife bailed off into the snow. Somehow, I don't know how, but somehow we got that horse off that tree without the horse freaking out too bad. Then the lead rope from the pack horse actually got stuck up in the tree. We had to get that down, and it was quite a mess. And I was actually joking with my wife because they do have these competitions in California called trail trials. And I thought, in what we did today, I'd like to see some of those trail try competitors do some of that. And maybe there's a way of taking some of the things we did today into the arena so they could compete in their little trail trials. And but it was kind of a good laugh for us, because we have some friends that do trail trials, and we were joking about, well, this would make a really good obstacle on a trail trial. I'm not sure you could move it into an arena, but it was kind of a standing joke with us when we run into these obstacles. So anyway,
the truth is, what happens out there is a bigger obstacle than you can imagine, isn't it?
You have to be a little prepared for anything.
These are two of the horses you had on that trip.
Yeah, the first one is Classy, my wife's horse. That's our lead horse. And the other is Shiloh. And Shiloh is our pack horse. Actually belongs to a friend of ours. But he boards him at our house, and we use him anytime my wife has broken and trained that horse. And two of our horses that have been through a lot of adventures with us on the Pacific Crest Trail.
They're beautiful horses.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for this interview. This is fun.
Good.
Hey, mister, have you seen my girl? She stands about yay high. She's got a lot of big blonde hair and big blue eyes. If you see her, won't you please call me if you can? Her name is Mary Ann. I've spent a lot of time and money. I even left a good job. Everything I own is in that truck, just me and my dog. Here is a message for her, won't you please give it to her if you can. I'm sorry, Mary Ann. All my life I've been looking for someone like her, someone good.
That's it, drive! Right now for that. When I come back, we'll write for you. Whole bunch. Easy, hey. What are you doing? That was weird.